All right, so in this section 10-8, we're going to be looking at the polar form of conics. And so we kind of have an overview here. And really, in polar coordinates, the type of conic is really determined by the value of E. So if E is between 0 and 1, you've got an ellipse, right? If the E is equal to 1, it's a parabola. And if the E is greater than 1, it is a hyperbola. Now the only conic that's not represented here is a circle. And remember, in a circle, the eccentricity is equal to 0. And we had that, of course, when we were doing, I believe, Unit 8, which was the conic sections. We kind of talked about the eccentricity of each one of those. Right now, the reason why circle is not included here is because the conic section circle in polar coordinates doesn't follow these equations that are down here, and all the rest of them do. And besides, we already discussed equations of circles in polar coordinates in the last section. All right, so we don't have to repeat that again. It has this form, right? R equals a cosine theta, or R equals a sine theta. But the other conics, ellipse, parabola, hyperbola, they have polar equations of this form, right? So those are the ones that we're going to focus on here. We already covered circles. All right, so let's take a look at these equations, right? And so we've got a conic section here. We've got the eccentricity greater than 0, right? So that excludes the circles. Okay, and we've got directrix there, and then a focus at the pole. All right, it will have equations of these forms. Now notice, these forms are all very similar. Okay, two of them have cosine as the function, two of them have sine as the function, and then with those, one's plus, one's minus here between this term. This number is always 1, right, to be in this format. And so what does this tell you? Well, the value of E here in front of the trig function, that will tell you what type of ellipse you have. If the E function, or the E value here, is between 0 and 1, we have an ellipse. If it's equal to 1, we have a parabola. If it's greater than 1, then you have a hyperbola, right? And of course, if it was 0, this form would break down anyway, because that would be 0 over, it would just be R equals 0, right? Okay. So, like I say, the circle has a completely different polar form than the rest of the three conics that we've already discussed. Okay, and of course, the different forms here, the plus, the minus, the sine, the cosine, it kind of tells you the direction of the directrix, right? So, for this, the directrix would be the vertical line x equals d. It'd be the vertical line x equals negative d, right? So, just kind of flips there, and then for sine they would be horizontally oriented. Okay, so what are we going to do as far as problems are concerned? So here's one. It says identify the type of conic. So I have an equation here. Now, here's what we're going to have to do, and here's the key to be able to identify the type of conic. Remember, we need to be able to read off the value of E. So to read off the value of E, then it has to be in this form. This term is the key. This value has to be 1. So unless this is 1, we cannot read off E accurately. However, what we can do is take this and make it a 1. And how can we do that? Well, we can take that by dividing every term here by 3, right? So if I just say, or in other words, you can think about this. I could multiply the top and the bottom by 1/3 times 1/3. So if I multiply by 1/3 divided by 1/3, that's multiplying by 1, right? So rewrite it. So think about dividing every term here by 3, okay? And so when I do, this will be 3 over 3 divided by 3 is 1. That's what we want. 2.25 divided by 3 is 0.75. Okay? And the rest of it is going to be cosine theta. All right? Cosine theta is the rest of it. Okay? All right? So now that we have made this a 1, I know this is the E is 0.75, and if the E is 0.75, then that's between 0 and 1, and we have an ellipse. All right. So likewise in the second one, okay, what we'll have to do is a little bit of rearranging here. Remember, I want this term to come first to be in the proper form. So this will be negative 16 over, this will be negative 2 plus 4 sine theta. Okay. And so from here, we're going to want to try to divide everything here by negative 2, because remember, I want this to be a 1. So if I divide this one by negative 2, it becomes 8. If I divide this by negative 2, it becomes 1. If I divide this by negative 2, it becomes negative 2 sine theta. And remember, we can do that because if I just divide the top and the bottom here by 2, okay, I'm not changing the value of the fraction. All right, so I need to look at this value, right? So my value of E here is 2, which means it's greater than 1. Now remember, you can ignore the negative out in front of it because we have forms for that, which means we have a hyperbola. All right. So again, the whole key is to be able to take the equation that's given, divide properly to make this value 1, read off the value of E, and then determine your correct conic section. All right?